Hey, KU fans, welcome back to a little extra KU Sports Extra. See what I did there? All right.
Two extras for
Yep,
this one.
that's right. That's right. Extra, extra. Read all about it. God,
Well, we do work at a newspaper, so we might as well, hang on to something from 100 years ago.
the glory days of the newspaper industry. Kids on the corners with berets yelling at passersby wearing three-piece suits on their way to the butcher shop. Oh, man, I'm going to tear up. It's real nostalgic. I didn't live it, but boy, it looked like a good time back then. Speaking of good times, KU is alive and well in Indianapolis and got some good news today when Kansas coach Bill Self said that Jalen Wilson is on track to rejoin the team in Indianapolis on Monday morning. There's a story at KUsports.com right now. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's got all the info and all the details there. What we're here to talk about with my guy Benton Smith is what that means for Kansas. Now, a couple of things to keep track of before we get into what it means exactly. KU plays at 8:40 on Monday night, Central Time. That's a late tip, the last game of the day. That couldn't have worked out better for Kansas in terms of getting Jalen back. Self said Sunday that Jalen needs to get to Indy around 9:30 or 10 a.m., and he expects that to be the case in order for him to get to their 11:30 a.m. practice. If he can go through practice, it'll be a light practice because it's game day. But if he can go through practice, that'll give him a better feel for how he looks, how he feels, how he is, and how much they might be able to use him. At this point, as of this recording, Self flat out said, I have no idea how much he'll be able to play. That's because he hasn't seen him in over a week. So that's where we're at. But they are getting him back. And Self flat out said, if he's here, he'll suit up, and I anticipate him playing. How big a lift can that be for this team, Ben, knowing that we don't know anything beyond the fact that he will wear the number 10 jersey and be on the bench?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be at the very least kind of a mental lift. Even if he can only give you 3 to 5 minutes, just having him out there in place of whomever you would have had to put out there for those minutes could end up, being a huge factor in what seems like it's going to be a very tight game. Could be a low-scoring game, and I mean, if Jalen Wilson can give you 5 to 10 minutes, and that allows you to kind of survive on the glass for a little bit because he's able to, at least give you that as your best rebounder, that could end up being a huge factor. So, and we also just saw David McCormick really not show too much fatigue or anything like that. I mean, obviously he got tired because he was playing so hard and hadn't played in a while, but he handled it. Now, we don't know if Jalen Wilson will be able to, be exactly the same, but I think KU's got to be encouraged by this. Just having him, even if it's just a couple of minutes, could be. I mean, it could be good for morale, but it also could be actually effective for what you're doing on the court. And like we saw with McCormick, I mean, adrenaline is probably going to be a factor for him too. The guy wants to play an NCAA tournament, and that might help him give you even more than you're expecting, because that's what we just saw happen the other day.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think, more than anything, the word I would use to describe Jalen Wilson is that he's a gamer. I mean, he can have a 2 for 11 night shooting the ball or 6 turnovers, but when the game's on the line and he steps to the free throw line, he's going to knock 4 in a row in. And we saw that early in the season. We've seen that throughout the season with him. He's not the most polished player. He's not their best player, but he is a gamer. He competes. He loves that moment. He loves those big times in games where you gotta show up or go home or whatever it is. And so, even just having that edge and attitude back as a part of your roster and your lineup, it could be enormous. I did ask Self today if having just gone through this with McCormick in terms of worrying about when he's going to come back and then getting him back and then getting him reacclimated and adjusting to the team again, if there was a benefit or an advantage that KU has now that they have to do that again with a different player. And after he kind of scoffed at the question and said, gosh, you guys think of everything. I mean, we do. That's our job. But he gave a great answer, as he normally does. The answer was he doesn't know. And that's a fair answer. A lot of times you get these coaches that say, I don't know, because they don't want to tell you what they know. He doesn't know. And I think the reality is it just brings home the whole COVID thing again, because every person that contracts it reacts differently. You might find 100 people that all have slightly different reactions and windows and timelines and all that for how they handle it and deal with it and are affected by it and all that. So it's totally fair for him to say he doesn't know if what they just went through with McCormick will help at all. But it makes sense that it would, right? I mean, these guys know now how to, kind of move forward with a little adversity and a little bit of, well, if we get him, we get him, great. But if not, we better elevate our game anyway. And I think that's where they're at. I think they're expecting, like Mitch Lightfoot talked about it today too. He said, here's the deal, next man up. We like what we have. We know we've got to play with what we've got. And if we get anything extra and additional and, anything that can add to our lineup, then that's even better. So perfect mindset. It's the right approach. And I think it puts them in a really good position to, to show up and compete and just play hard like they did the other night, because that's all you got to do this time of year. You got to play well, but more than anything, you got to play hard and you got to lay it all out there. And they did that the other day, and it helped them advance. And that's their game plan going into this USC game. I am going to be really interested, though, to see, with McCormick, it was so different because he was the only big body they had. Lightfoot didn't play a great game the other day and didn't play a bunch of minutes, and they needed some resistance. With Jalen, yeah, he's your best rebounder and a gamer and all those things we just talked about, but he doesn't fill that same need where he's the only player you have that can do that, right? And so I think, if anything, that might allow him to kind of slide back into things with a little more, I don't know, pace or just a little more comfortably and slowly. You're not going to say, hey, go out there and play 25 minutes and be the biggest dude and use every ounce of energy you have. You said it. He could play 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 3 minutes there, and by the end of the game have played 10 minutes, but also impacted the game in a very positive way. So do you think their depth on the perimeter and just knowing that those other guys are out there, will that help him and help their adjustment to getting him back?
I think so. And I mean, like, that's the thing about Jalen Wilson. He's not like an integral part of your offense. So
right.
You're not going to be asking like, God, we need 15 points out of you, or we're dead in the water. Right.
Right.
He can go in there and just like kind of fit in and kind of compete on the glass. And I mean, even if you're just boxing out one of the Mobley brothers so that they're not getting an offensive rebound or defensive rebound, that alone is extremely valuable in a game like this. So, I mean, I feel like he could play 10 minutes and not score and still be a factor.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said, too, about adrenaline. I mean, there's no doubt, right? It had to kill him. I checked his Instagram and his Twitter. I was seeing if while that game was going on the other day, he was reacting in any way to what he was watching. And he wasn't, and that's okay. I'm sure he was watching and probably screaming and yelling and all that. But I think the idea is that you get to play in this tournament. This is what you live for. This is what every kid growing up wants to do that wants to be a college basketball player. And so he almost had it taken away. His team got him through one round, and he gets a chance to come back and play. So I think his mindset will be perfect. I think the adrenaline, the excitement of just getting back to doing what you do, that could be a huge lift for him and could probably mask some of the fatigue and just the side effects of whatever you had to go through recently. They didn't really get into that today when talking about the details of symptoms or how he's been. Again, they haven't been around him. I mean, they've definitely talked to him, but they have not seen him. And so nobody really knows. And who knows what he's telling them? I mean, maybe he's like, yeah, I'm fine, just because he wants to play, right? I mean, who wouldn't say that? So I think that's really interesting. I asked McCormick about that today too. And if the adrenaline played a role in him and his return on Saturday. And he didn't really address it about pregame or anything like that, but he definitely said that, late in the game with the game on the line, it helped him push through. It helped him, deliver and realize that I'm not tired because I can't be. I've got to use this adrenaline and pull my team to the finish line. And he obviously did that in an incredible way. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 25 minutes. I mean, he was sensational. I think you should set the bar lower for Jalen in his return. He's not going to go off like that. But like you said, could he get 5 or 6 rebounds? Could he do some boxing out? Could he knock down a couple of shots? Could he get to the free throw line? Man, if he can do that, especially as you mentioned in a game that very well could be played in the 60s, those could be big rebounds, big points, big minutes, even if they're small numbers. So I think that's it's a lift. It's a huge advantage for Kansas, and it's also something else that USC has to deal with, right? They don't know what he'll be either. They can scout him, they can watch his whole season up to this point, and they will, but they're not necessarily going to be seeing the same player. He may adjust just subtly, just change it up here and there, and be a different player for 10 minutes than they've seen on tape. And that could be huge too. I mean, you probably don't want to make wholesale changes to your game, but sometimes you just do to survive or because of the matchup. And so I think it's really wild to be up here and to have this kind of be the story again, right? It was massive news that McCormick was flying up and he got here Friday morning. Now we're deja vu. It's right back to another Jayhawk is flying up to Indianapolis and hoping to help give this team a lift. What are your final thoughts about not just Jalen, but the game? We'll have a ton of stuff on KUsports.com throughout Sunday and Monday, so check it out. Coverage of this game is obviously everything right now. We're going to dive in from all different angles. But what are your final thoughts about just the matchup and whether Kansas, needs Jalen out there a lot or not, just how they can play in this game and what you expect it to look like?
Well, I think we kind of alluded to this yesterday, but USC is so long and athletic on its front line. I'm expecting it to be extremely difficult for KU to score in the paint. That includes McCormick, but one of the advantages that Dave might have, if he's still like on the uptick and not feeling any kind of hangover effect from his COVID stint, is that he's like bigger and stronger than those guys on the USC front line. Those guys are athletes and they're long and they're very good at like blocking shots and, kind of making you rethink about how you're going to put up a shot in the paint just because, they can jump up and knock it out of the air. But David McCormick should be able to kind of maybe bully those guys if he can get position and just, if you can post up deep in the paint and KU can get him touches right there. I mean, he's got a strength advantage as long as he's feeling, 90% or even it's 85%. That the guy is, as we've seen so many times, he's huge.
Yeah.
The USC guys are long and tall and athletic, but they don't have that kind of bulk and muscle that he has. So maybe KU can find a way to kind of use that advantage and actually score some inside against a team that defends the paint really well.
Yeah, there you go. I also think transition and just getting points off your defense. I mean, this stuff they've been talking about all year, right? But I think that could be really an emphasis in this one. I mean, if you let those guys get set in their half court and you let the Mobley brothers defend the lane, you're not even going to want to go in the lane, right? The guards are going to turn the corner and then, abort mission, just like people used to do with Doak sitting back there and other KU shot blockers. So pressure the ball, get out in passing lanes, try to get easy buckets where you can score at the rim without them being anywhere near you. I mean, that's easier said than done, of course, but I do think that one of the key matchups will be KU's defense on the perimeter against the USC guards. I don't think very many teams outside of the Big 12 have seen the two-headed monster of DeJuan Harris and Marcus Garrett that Kansas can throw at people defensively. It really disrupts you. It really makes you uncomfortable. It really can be a nasty type of half-court experience for KU's opponent, and that should be something KU looks to use to their advantage. Self talked about it a little bit today in the press conference and basically said he thought against Eastern Washington, one of the reasons that game got into the 80s and 90s, which is not where KU wants to play, was because KU's defense was really good at points in that game, especially in the second half. But early on, they did a little bit more gambling than he would have liked, and instead of just playing sound defense. And you did see that. You saw Ochai or Garrett or even DeJuan a little bit jump in some passing lanes and over pursue and close out too hard and things like that. And I think he's looking for more of a sound effort, more of a grind it, sit down and defend and make USC really work the shot clock to get anything they can get. I just looked up their average look of time of possession, and they're one of the worst teams in the country at that. So I think that the longer you can make them grind out a possession and get late into the clock, the more that's going to favor Kansas in terms of keeping the score down, but also in terms of the pace and also in terms of maybe forcing some turnovers with some bad decisions late as that clock starts counting down and gets in their head a little bit. So this, to me, this is going to have to be a game that Kansas wins defensively, and completely the same thing on the other side of the coin. I mean, if USC is going to win this game, they're probably going to have to do it defensively as well, and control McCormick and the paint, basically. So I think it's a great matchup. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it'll be a terrific second-round game. We already saw a really good one earlier with Loyola beating Illinois in the 8-1 game there. And as I'm sitting here currently, Baylor's leading 24-16 in another 1-9 game. So, these are tough second-round games all over the place right now. Benton, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I thought it was interesting last week leading up to the KU game. Eastern Washington's coach, Shante Leggins, said that his team had this really long pause. And when they came back, they played really well, actually, in their first game in like 4 weeks or whatever it was. But it was in their second game back that he saw guys kind of hitting a wall in the second half. So I'm just curious to see how David McCormick does in his second game back.
Yeah, good point.
So, I mean, he might be fine, but it's just something to monitor. Does it finally catch up with him a little bit here where he's not able to kind of even match what he just did the other day against Eastern Washington?
Yeah.
Should be interesting to see. He might be fine. He might take a dip. We don't know yet. So something to watch.
For sure. Good point. And he talked a little about that today too with okay, so they get all Sunday to rest and recover. And then they get all Monday to stay off their feet for the most part, other than that 11:30 practice and light shoot around before the game. But other than that, it's rest, recover for 2 full days almost. So I think that late tip not only benefits Jalen and his opportunity to be available, but it also benefits McCormick. And he said, the long timeouts too. Self talked about this a little the other day. The long timeouts, the extra timeouts, that really helped him manage his way through those 25 minutes because he was able to get legitimate 3-minute breathers over and over and over throughout that game without his team burning timeouts even. So that's big. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, again, they're different players. It's different situations. We know that COVID affects people differently, but I do think that one of the biggest benefits that we saw from McCormick was just his poise. And we talked about this after the game, but he was so under control. And I wondered if that was because he was just so focused on just making it through it, right? That he didn't have all those distractions. He's talked all year about the free mind, right? His mind was so free because he was just focused on, I just have to play hard. And the rest just kind of came to him. And I wonder if that'll be sort of the same blueprint for Jalen, who can come up here and just not put pressure on himself, not worry about too much, just be poised, be happy to be back out there and just play really within himself. I mean, he does a good job of that all year, he's done a good job of that all year. But I think seeing Dave do that the other day should be something he should look to, replicate as much as he can. So it'll be fascinating to watch. It'll be fascinating to cover. It's pretty remarkable that in back-to-back games at this stage in the season, there's a storyline that's equally as big as win or go home, or who they're playing, or the fact that it's March Madness. So pretty crazy stuff. But we'll have all kinds of coverage, as I mentioned, on KUsports.com. There's a bunch of stuff up there already from Saturday and all kinds of reactions and sights and sounds. And Benton, I know as soon as you get off here, you're going to work on thousands more.
And they'll all be about the Mobley brothers.
There you go. There's a little teaser, spoiler alert. So anyway, check KU Sports throughout Monday and Sunday, and we'll have all your coverage from the game, 8:40 p.m. Central Time at Hinkle Fieldhouse. I cannot wait to get up there. Self said the same thing today. Basically, when he heard that this thing was going to be in Indianapolis, the one thing he kept thinking to himself was, I hope we get to play in Hinkle. I hope we get to play in Hinkle. They got their wish. Now we'll see if it pays off for them. KU USC, 8:40 p.m. Monday night, the last game of the tournament. 15 other teams will be in the Sweet 16 by the time KU's game goes final. They will be vying to be the last team to complete the Sweet 16 puzzle. We'll see if they can get it done against a very tough USC team. Should be fun. I'll be there. Benton will be there. Well, right there anyway in that room. And we'll talk to you guys throughout the day and after that game as well. Thanks for checking out this extra. And we'll talk to you guys again real soon on another episode of KU Sports Extra. Take care.